everyone, welcome to my channel Semper Astra. My name is Maggie, and in today's video I will talk about all of these things that helped me most to cope with sight loss and that enabled me to adjust to life as a totally blind person. Whilst watching this recording, please keep in mind that this video doesn't cover a comprehensive list of universal tips and solutions, and that I mainly share my own experiences and reflections. At the same time, I hope that this video will be useful to many people who struggle with sight loss and to many individuals who in different ways support people losing their sight. For those of you who visit my channel for the first time, I wanted to clarify that since birth I was visually impaired. For the first 14 years of my life, I could see well enough that with the help of eyeglasses I was able to walk independently, which means that I didn't need a white cane and I didn't need help of a sighted guide. And I was even able to ride a bike independently in a familiar area. What is more, with the help of eyeglasses and with the help of magnifying glass, I was able to read regular print, even font 12, and I was writing using regular pen. However, I was never able to see well enough to see anything from the blackboard, even when I was sitting in the front row at school, and I was never able to see well enough to see the number of the approaching bus. I hope that these examples give you some idea about how well I could see and how much use I had of my vision before losing my sight. So when I was 15, I lost my sight completely, and that was quite sudden loss. And at the moment, I am totally blind and I don't have even any light perception. So now I will move to the points that I have prepared for today. So in the first place, I wanted to emphasize that it was really helpful to me that since I can remember, I was aware of my eye condition. I knew that the illnesses that I have are having impact on my eyesight, and I also understood that they may lead to sight loss. And I also understood the mechanisms of these illnesses, and I knew more or less how and what exactly will cause total blindness. And when I was preparing for this recording today, I was trying to recall the conversation during I was told all of this, and I realized that on some level I always had this knowledge, well, at least ever since I remember. And when I was a very small child, this knowledge was very kind of simple on the level of understanding of the small child, and this knowledge was kind of growing up with me. And thanks to the fact that I always was aware of my eye condition, I never experienced the moment during which I would be shocked with all of that information, and I never was in the situation in which I would have to process it all at once and kind of digest it all at once. And thanks to the fact that I always was aware of all of the risks that came with my eye condition, I had a lot of time to accept the situation and to be prepared for the situation of losing sight. Of course, I was always hoping that I will never lose sight, but I knew that it could happen, And in a way, I feel that I was more prepared for that thanks to the fact that I had all of this knowledge. Second point is all about the fact that since early childhood, many people in many different ways tried to explain to me what blindness is, what difficulties blind people may experience in their daily life, and how these difficulties may be overcome. And when I was a child, I was going to many summer and winter camps organized by Polish Blind Association. And during these camps, I had many different activities that helped me to understand things about blindness. And I recall one activity during which I was blindfolded, and my task was to complete many different tasks without using sight. And thanks to this experience, I developed, of course, it wasn't like total understanding what blindness is, but some understanding of what it is to be blind. And I also learned that, being blind means relying on other senses, and that for blind people it is harder to do many things, but it is still possible. When going for all of these camps, I also met many blind people who, for me, were positive role models and who kind of presented blind people in a very positive light, and who showed me that it is possible to lead independent and happy life despite blindness. During these summer and winter camps, many people also tried to encourage me to learn Braille alphabet, and I have to admit that as a child I was always more interested in playing games or some sports, and I never learned Braille alphabet, but at least I had opportunity to see what Braille machine looks like, what Braille, how Braille works, and I had some idea of how, people write and read in Braille. And thanks to that, when it came time for me to learn Braille, it was easier to kind of start learning Braille alphabet, and I feel that I was more prepared for starting using Braille. Finally, I would like to mention in this point that also many doctors who looked after me were trying to talk to me about blindness and preparing me in a kind of really positive way for this possibility that I may lose my sight at one point. And I remember especially one situation. I was in hospital then, and one evening other kids went to watch some film or some other TV program, and I had a drip. And those days this pulse for the drip didn't have wheels, so I basically had to stay in bed. And this doctor came to me and sat on my bed, and she read me an article about one of the schools for the blind, that was Lasky School for the Blind in Poland. And this article explained everything about how the school was created and about the lady who established the school. And it also explained how the school works at the moment, and this kind of created this positive image of that school in my mind. And when this moment came where it was very beneficial for me to go to the school for the blind because I wasn't able to see anymore, I already had a positive image of that school, and I already wanted to go there, and I felt and I knew that this is the best option for me. And I was actually quite proactive in making sure that I would get the place in that school, which was, of course, really, really helpful. In the third point, I wanted to mention that when I was a teenager and when the risk of me losing sight was increasing a lot, I was always involved in making all of the decisions about my medical treatment. And of course, my parents were signing all of the consents. But I remember that doctors and my parents were always discussing all of the options with me, and they were always telling me about risks that were linked with different decisions. And I particularly remember one situation that happened before this surgery, during which I lost my sight. And I remember that before this surgery, the doctor who was preparing me for that surgery explained in a lot of detail to me that if I don't have this operation, I will for 99% lose my sight sooner or later, and that it will be sooner and not later. And he also said that for 60% this surgery may be successful and my sight will be saved, at least for some time and maybe forever. And he also told me that if I don't, that this surgery also brings with itself a lot of risk, and that for 40% it may not work out, and that I may lose my sight during or just after the surgery. So as you can see, I was given quite a lot of detail. And I also remember that even after my mom signed the consent, and when I was in the operating theater, I still was giving it an option to say no. And I remember that I was on the in the operating theater, on the operating table, and they again asked me this question whether I really want the surgery. And thanks to the fact that I feel that I had a lot of control over the situation, I never had this feeling that, I would do something differently. And I knew that I knew my options. I know that I knew my options, and I knew that basically these choices were best choices for me. In the fourth point is all about the fact that I have knowledge that everybody who was involved in my care, my parents and the doctors, did absolutely everything that could have been done to save my sight. And even after I lost my vision, I still had few more surgeries that tried to restore my sight. And knowing that helped me to transfer from being focused on the treatment to being focused on adjusting to life as a blind person. At the same time, I want to emphasize that nobody was never giving me any false hopes, and that I was always given very realistic information. So I never was hoping for something that would never happen anyway. And the fact that I knew straight away that there is nothing else that can be done about my sight loss also helped me to let go and to move on with my life, and to be focused on on learning to live as a blind person. In the fifth point, I just wanted to mention that after it became apparent that my sight cannot be saved, it cannot be restored, I was offered a lot of help by many different people. So first of all, I need to mention that I lost my sight during the last year of primary school. And also I lost my sight at the end of the school year. And that year I lost a lot of schooling because of my illness and because all of the surgeries that I had. And the teachers from hospital school spent a lot of time with me, trying to help me to catch up and trying to help me so I was able to continue with my education. And I remember that for 2 weeks I was unable to walk at all. And during this time, the teachers were sitting with me by my bed and just were reading me many things from textbooks and were helping me to catch up as much as they could. And these teachers also encouraged me and my parents to contact the school for the blind, that was the Lasky School for the Blind in Poland, and to reach out for help straight away. And when I was still in the hospital, my parents contacted the school, and on the day when I was discharged from the hospital, I went to that school straight away, and I went through the admission process, through the recruitment process. And although that was the end of the school year and already the school was not working because of the vacation time, because of the summer holidays time, the headmistress of that school arranged a week for me, and during that week the teachers taught me Braille alphabet. They taught me how to use cane, like basics of using white cane, and they also taught me how to write maths in Braille as well. And during this summer holiday, I also had some help from Polish Blind Association, and I had some help at home, and I also went to summer camp, and during the summer camp I also received a lot of help with learning Braille and learning to use white cane. The sixth point is kind of very closely linked to the fifth point, and in the sixth point I wanted to emphasize that thanks to the fact that I was offered help straight away, I was never in that limbo. So basically, as soon as I lost ability to walk independently with, using my vision, and as soon as I lost ability to read and write, using my vision, I was given skills to walk with the help of white cane, and I was taught Braille, so I was given a new way of reading and writing. And the fact that I was never left alone without these skills was also really, really helpful. In the seventh point, I wanted to emphasize that also thanks to the fact that I was never left in that limbo and that I was given new skills, I was able to focus on practicing these skills, on learning Braille, on learning mobility skills, and I was never left there on my own with my thoughts. And of course, I kind of had, I experienced sadness because of sight loss, and I was thinking about this situation, but these thoughts never took over, if that makes sense. And I basically, thanks to the fact that I didn't want to be left helpless, and I understood that to be able to be independent, I need to learn to walk independently. And I understood that if I don't want to wait for others to guide me all the time, I had to learn as soon as possible to use white cane. And I also understood that to continue my education, I had to learn Braille, because nobody told me that, Maggie, if you don't learn Braille, you can't go to high school. But for me, it was obvious that to go to high school, I have to be able to read and write. So my all energy during the months after I lost my sight actually went to learning these new skills. And all of my focus shifted from thinking about treatment to thinking about my future goals and about the way how I will, achieve these goals. In the eighth point, I wanted to emphasize that as soon as I was taught a new skill, I was encouraged to practice this new skill straight away. So, for instance, after I had my first class of mobility, orientation and mobility, and as soon as I was taught how to use white cane, of course they were only basic things, but as soon as I was given this cane and as soon as I was shown how to use it, I was told to use it straight away. So I was never in the situation where I would have just, a hour of mobility once a week, and then in the meantime I don't use these skills. I just basically received the cane, I was taught how to use it, and the same day I was using that cane and I was trying to use it independently. And the same thing was with daily living skills. In my school for the blind, we were taught many independent living skills. And for instance, as soon as I was taught how to hoover, I was expected to hoover the floor. And in my school for the blind, there were no cleaners. Basically, we were asked to clean our rooms and, everything like bathrooms and corridors and everything. And thanks to that, we were practicing the skills that we were taught. So at the moment, I feel that I'm relatively good at mobility skills and at daily living skills. And this really, really, really helps me with achieving my other goals. In the 9th point, I wanted to mention that what really helped me was the fact that I always had dreams and goals, and the fact that I had plans for my near future and dreams. This helped me a lot to focus on kind of, I would say, practicalities of how I can in this new situation achieve these goals. And as soon as I was giving tools to work towards my goals and opportunity, I grabbed at it and I was able to kind of focus on my goals and not to kind of think too much about things that I lost and that I would never regain again. And I'm not saying that I never think about these things. I have to say that till these days, when I hit the barrier that I struggle to overcome, these thoughts are coming back. But I always kind of manage to snap out of this thinking and to refocus on practicalities of how to achieve my goal and how to overcome these barriers. Another thing that I wanted to mention is importance of being proactive. And I feel that kind of being proactive also helped me to receive help that I was offered, but also to seek for more help and to welcome all of the helps from all of the sources. And at this point, I want to say that I am totally aware of the fact that I was extremely lucky to receive all of this help that I describe. And I know that many people have to wait for months and months for help. And this is why I would like to encourage you to look for help everywhere you can, to look for help in your local organizations, to some national organizations, to even contact schools for the blind. Maybe they will be able to support you. And please don't miss out on any opportunity of receiving help and support. And also don't decline the tools that you may receive that may enable you to adjust to your new basically situation and to the situation of losing sight. And I know that sometimes it is difficult to accept the help, and I have to say that although, for instance, I was happy to go to school for blind kids, sometimes I was like, ambivalent about this, and I had these thoughts that, well, I would prefer to stick to my previous plan and to go to regular school, to which I chose before I lost my sight. And I know that sometimes it is not easy to kind of like accept everything about our new situation, but I think that sooner we accept changes, then easier it will be for us to adjust to our new situation and to live our lives to the full. At this point, I also wanted to mention that I'm fully aware of the fact that this film is only covering a small area of this wide topic, and that the help that people may benefit from depends on many different factors. For instance, different help will need people who lost their sight early in life, and different help will need people who lost their sight later in life. And also a lot depends on the fact whether it was a sudden sight loss or whether it was a gradual sight loss, and also a lot depend on the fact whether it was predictable or totally unpredictable. Like, for instance, some people lose their sight because of accidents, and there was no way to kind of predict it and no way to prepare for it. And this is why please also look for other materials covering these topics. I also want to take this opportunity to thank all of these people who supported me with adjusting to sight loss and who helped me to cope with my sight loss. And I am fully aware of the fact that without your help, I wouldn't be where I am now, and I am very grateful for all your help and for the fact that you were there for me then. And also, if you find this video helpful and if you think that other people may benefit from that recording, please share it. And if you benefit from the topics that I cover on my channel, please subscribe. And thank you for your attention today, and I will see you soon in my next video. Bye bye!